The version of Voldemort that made it into the movies left a few things out, including some of the most chilling parts of his character. So in this video, I have decided to break down the differences between Voldemort in the Harry Potter books and Voldemort in the Harry Potter movies, why he's so much more terrifying in the written version of the story, even when he's not doing anything. I'll look at what part of his backstory was cut that changes how we understand him completely, and what small detail made him seem less powerful than he really was. So let's start with how Voldemort carries himself, because the movies changed that quite a lot. In the books, Voldemort is described as moving lazily. He is calm, controlled, deliberate. Even when he's angry, it's a cold fury. He's not shouting or screaming. Take the graveyard scene in The Goblet of Fire. In the book, after Voldemort is resurrected, he just stands there. The Death Eaters come to him. One of them literally crawls up to him, but he barely moves except to raise his wand. In this chapter, the word lazily is used 3 times. But when it comes to the movie version of this scene, he's prowling around the circle of Death Eaters. He's ripping off their masks, constantly gesticulating like he can't control himself. And that's the problem, right? Book Voldemort doesn't need to move. He doesn't need to shout. His presence alone is enough to make people freeze with terror. When he tortures someone in the books, he just raises his wand and whispers, "Crucio." Minimal effort, maximum effect. But movie Voldemort seems like he's working hard. He throws his whole body into casting spells. He makes faces, shouts incantations. It's like he's trying to convince people that he's scary. And that difference is huge, right? Because in the books, other characters are literally afraid to move in Voldemort's presence. They are paralyzed by fear while he remains perfectly still. But the movies flip that, right? They make him the one who's constantly moving, while everyone else just stands around watching. And that makes him so much less intimidating, right? Because what's scarier to you, right? Someone screaming and flailing around, or someone who could destroy you with a whisper. The books also show us glimpses of Voldemort when he was handsome and charming in flashbacks. And being handsome and charming is all part of his manipulation. Look at the scene with Hepzibah Smith in the books, when he's after her treasures. He's polite, flattering, almost seductive, and she's completely taken in by his charm. And then he murders her for Hufflepuff's cup. And then when he tries to get Dumbledore to hire him at Hogwarts, he's putting on this act of being respectful, humble. But then you can really see his frustration when it doesn't work, when Dumbledore sees right through him. And that's key to who he is and to his relationship with Dumbledore, which we'll get into later. But he's charming and he's manipulative, and we see glimpses of this side of him outside of flashbacks too. You know, the need to be charming has sort of gone as he gets older. He's soulless and he rules with fear, but he's still manipulative, right? He's persuasive. He uses emotional language despite being a sociopath who feels nothing. He refers to the Death Eaters when he summons them after his resurrection as his true family, as though there's weight to that, as though family means something to him, while he desecrates his father's grave. And look, found family can be significant. We've all seen Guardians of the Galaxy. But Voldemort doesn't care about anybody else outside of what they can do for him. That's not family, is it? We see him refer to himself as merciful too. These big emotive words that mean something, that have emotional weight. But the same intensity in movie Voldemort's movement is present in his dialogue as well. To manipulate, there needs to be subtlety, right? But this is lost in the films. The subtlety is gone. Everything is big and over the top and dramatic. His punishments are equally calculated in the books as well. They're equally subtle and controlled. He uses the Cruciatus Curse on his followers at least 3 times throughout the series. Not in a rage, but as a measured punishment. A reminder of what happens when you disappoint him. He humiliates Bellatrix in front of the others when she fails him. He degrades Lucius by taking his wand and then laughing at the idea that Lucius could have his in return. He has the other Death Eaters laughing at him too. He sends Wormtail to live with Snape like he's an unwanted pet. All of this done so publicly. It's still theatrical, but it's a subtle theatric, so the other Death Eaters know they could be next. It's psychological warfare almost. He keeps them loyal through fear, but it's controlled, it's methodical intimidation. But in the movies, we just don't really get much of this. There's the scene where he takes Lucius's wand and he snaps off the eccentric modifications. I think that's quite well done. But largely, we lose a lot of Voldemort's methodical manipulation of his forces, which ultimately detracts from who Voldemort is as a character. The things we've mentioned already, he's cold, controlled, deliberate, methodical. That's the mark of a truly dangerous leader. Someone who knows exactly how much fear to apply and when. But I think the movies lose all of that. There's a hierarchy of power in the wizarding world, and it's key to Voldemort's plans, to Voldemort's ambitions, and to Voldemort's story arc. But the movies mess it up a bit. You see, Voldemort is one of the most powerful wizards of all time, but he fears Dumbledore. And we're told this a few times before we see it. And we see it first in the battle at the Ministry of Magic, right at the end of the Order of the Phoenix. And then we see it again during the flashbacks from Voldemort's life in the Half-Blood Prince. In the Order of the Phoenix, Dumbledore bests Voldemort in a duel, despite Voldemort pulling no punches, being willing to kill Dumbledore, whereas Dumbledore is operating with one hand tied behind his back. He doesn't want to kill Voldemort, he just wants to stall him until the Ministry arrives. Plus, he's protecting Harry from Voldemort, and despite this, Dumbledore is still winning the duel. Voldemort is powerful, but he's not as powerful as Dumbledore. But he has other weapons in his arsenal, right? He's charming and manipulative. We see him trying to use this on Dumbledore when he applies to the Defense Against the Dark Arts job, but it doesn't work. In fact, Dumbledore reveals that he knows far more about Voldemort's life than Voldemort expected, and he's visibly frustrated by it. So in the books, we see that Voldemort is outmatched and outthought by Dumbledore time and time again. And so it becomes clear why he doesn't directly attack Hogwarts during any of the first 6 books, until Dumbledore is dead. The movies, however, don't get this. The nuance of that relationship is completely lost. I mean, the flashback that we discussed about him applying for a job, having an interview with Dumbledore, that's cut completely. So we never really see Dumbledore show Tom that he won't be manipulated by him. Perhaps we see it briefly in the Chamber of Secrets, but we lose that big instance of it in the Half-Blood Prince. And in the films, the battle in the Ministry isn't weighted in the same way. You know, Voldemort appears to be on the front foot, launching attack after attack at Dumbledore, who constantly looks like he's clinging on for dear life. That hierarchy is toppled. And because they're so evenly matched, it's never clear why Voldemort doesn't just attack Hogwarts. It's never clear why he truly fears Dumbledore. But the other side of the hierarchy is missing too. We need to see how much more powerful he is than pretty much everyone else excluding Dumbledore. In the Battle of Hogwarts, in the books, we see Voldemort dueling Kingsley, McGonagall, and Slughorn all at the same time. Like, they are already established as some of the most gifted wizards alive. Kingsley in particular is a master duelist who is often tasked with protecting the Prime Minister. Important people are under his protection because he's that good. But him, alongside McGonagall, who's also great, and Slughorn, who is also great, and Voldemort handles them comfortably. But that's cut from the films entirely, so we don't see this side of him. In fact, we barely see him fighting in the battle at all. He's hanging back at the boathouse with Snape, he's walking up the steps in Hogwarts with nobody really challenging him. Voldemort's place in the hierarchy of most magical wizards to ever live is just told to us in the films. It's never really shown. In fact, the main thing that is shown is we see him constantly being bested by teenagers. Now let's talk about how Voldemort looks, because the movies held back. In the books, Voldemort isn't just pale and bold. He is described as being barely human. Whiter than a skull, with wide, livid scarlet eyes, and a nose that was flat as a snake's with slits for nostrils. His hands are like large pale spiders with unnaturally long fingers. He's skeletally thin with no lips. But the movies, they gave him blue eyes. Ralph Fiennes' regular blue eyes, when those red cat-like eyes were supposed to be one of the most terrifying features of him. And look, yes, they made him pale, they took away his nose, but they just made him look like some weird guy who needs more sun. Not like something that should horrify people on sight. There's also that weird scene in the Order of the Phoenix, right, where he's just wearing a muggle suit. Like Voldemort, the wizard who despises everything non-magical, and they put him in muggle clothing. Like, I know it's not him, he's not actively wearing it, this is like a vision or a dream or something, but it's our first visual sight of Voldemort after his resurrection. They could have made it so much more terrifying. And this matters because Voldemort's appearance in the books is symbolic. It's a physical manifestation of how corrupted his soul has become. Every description emphasizes how he's become less than human through his own terrible choices. And it's not just the big things, it's the details. In the books, he's described as having no discernible lips. The books also emphasize his unnaturally long, spider-like fingers. But in the movies, they're just normal hands. And then there's his wand. In the films, they gave him what looks like a femur, like a bone, which is ridiculous when you think about it. Can you imagine Tom Riddle as an 11-year-old walking out of Ollivanders with a literal body part? Plus, his wand is a key part of his lore, right? His wand is made of yew, and yew trees are literally called death-eating trees. It's where the term Death Eaters comes from. Their berries are poisonous, they used to be planted in graveyards, they take the nutrients up from all the dead in the ground, and it's perfect for Voldemort's lore and his backstory. Plus, his resurrection, the first time we see this wand, is in a graveyard. Would have been perfect, but the movies gave him a bone instead, like a dog. And finally, let's talk about what might be the biggest problem with movie Voldemort, his missing backstory. Like, the movies gave us glimpses, right? A scene in the orphanage, a brief moment with Slughorn, but they cut out the most intriguing parts. The parts that actually explain who Voldemort is and why he became what he became. You know, in the books we get his story, his motivations, his fleshed out journey. We get to know who Tom Riddle is or was from these flashbacks. But by cutting all of this, the movies just keep him stuck as a one-dimensional villain. He's evil because he's evil, nothing deeper. In the books, we learn about the Gaunt family, right? Voldemort's mother, Merope, who was desperate for love, and so she used love potion on Tom Riddle Sr., ran off with him, and when the potion wore off, he abandoned her, left her alone and pregnant. And then she died, giving birth, choosing death over a life without love. And this isn't just backstory, it's key to understanding Voldemort. Like, he was conceived without love, and he goes on to become a dark wizard who can't understand love at all, before ultimately being defeated by love. Like, it's not just a character flaw, it's built into his very existence. But the movies just show us a creepy kid. Like, in the movies, he's charming, he's manipulative, even from a young age. He fooled everyone except Dumbledore. Teachers loved him, students admired him, wanted to be him. He was head boy, he won awards. Nobody suspected he was capable of murder. But in the movies, especially the Half-Blood Prince, he already looks obviously evil, pale, creepy, disturbing. His manipulation isn't subtle. You can literally see the cogs turning in his eyes while he's trying to manipulate Slughorn. And it's really hard to believe that anyone would be fooled by him for 5 minutes, let alone 7 years. And this matters because it changes how we understand Voldemort's rise to power. Book Tom Riddle succeeded because he was a master manipulator. He could make people trust him, to love him even, right up until he destroyed them. Whereas movie Tom Riddle just kind of comes across like a future serial killer, which, you know, he is, but it makes everyone around him seem stupid for not seeing it coming. Without this backstory, movie Voldemort just becomes another generic evil villain. Evil for evil's sake. But book Voldemort is the product of a loveless conception, an abandoned childhood, and choices that stripped away his humanity piece by piece. And that's infinitely more terrifying than just crazy bald guy with a snake face. And if you like this video comparing the books to the movies, I broke down the differences between Dumbledore in this video, which you might want to watch next.